Welcome to our deep dive into the world of intelligence in the 21st century. You've given us quite a collection of material, um, scholarly articles, insider accounts, even some videos to really make us think.
It's a fascinating mix.
Yeah.
What I think is most striking is how relevant it all is to you.
Yeah.
We're not just talking about James Bond and shadowy figures.
Right.
We're talking about information you generate every day,
Yeah.
the security of our digital world, and even the potential for things like bioengineered weapons.
Okay, so let's unpack all of this.
All right.
You mentioned the history of the intelligence community, the IC. That sounds like a good place to begin, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
The IC as we know it today really emerged after World War II
Okay.
and then expanded rapidly during the Cold War. Back then, the focus was almost entirely on nation-states, especially the Soviet Union.
Right.
And the U.S. had a significant technological advantage.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah,
From the sources you've shared, though, it seems like things have changed quite a bit since then.
they certainly have. The rise of non-state actors like terrorist groups, the proliferation of technology and the increasing interconnectedness of our world
Right.
have all created new challenges for the IC.
Hmm?
It's had to adapt quickly to keep pace.
Right.
For example, instead of just focusing on traditional espionage agencies like the CIA now have to grapple with things like cyber warfare and disinformation campaigns.
That brings to mind one of the sources. We have a Washington Post video outlining all 17 different agencies that make up the U.S. intelligence community.
Oh, wow.
It's kind of mind-boggling to think about all of those groups working together, or at
Yeah.
least trying to.
It is a very complex web,
Yeah.
but let's just focus on four of the key players for this deep dive.
Okay.
The CIA, the NSA, the FBI,
Right.
and the ODNI, which is the Office of the Director of National Intelligence.
Okay.
So the ODNI is the coordinator trying to keep all these agencies working in sync.
All right. That helps to simplify things a bit.
Yeah.
So the CIA, they're the ones we typically associate with spies and covert operations in foreign countries, right?
Well, that's part of it, but not the whole story.
Okay.
Their primary mission is to gather foreign intelligence and analyze it,
Okay.
to inform policymakers and protect U.S. interests abroad.
Mm-hmm.
So they're trying to understand political dynamics in unstable regions,
Okay.
assess the intentions of foreign leaders, track down terrorist networks.
Right.
It's not always glamorous, but it's absolutely critical to national security.
Okay. And what about the NSA? They're the ones that are all about signals, intelligence, like intercepting communications and breaking codes, right?
That's right. The NSA is the king of code breaking and electronic surveillance.
Okay.
They're listening in on electronic communications,
Mhm.
trying to decipher encrypted messages,
Right.
and gathering intelligence on our adversaries' activities.
Right.
But it's not just about spying. The NSA also plays a vital role in cybersecurity protecting U.S. networks from attack.
Okay.
So think of them as the digital guardians of our nation's data.
So we've got the CIA focused on foreign intelligence,
Right.
NSA dealing
Mhm.
with signals, intelligence, and cybersecurity.
Uh-huh.
What about the FBI? They're usually associated with domestic law enforcement.
But that's their primary function.
Okay.
But they also play a crucial role in intelligence, particularly when it comes to counterintelligence and counterterrorism.
Okay.
Remember, threats don't always respect national borders.
Right.
The FBI is responsible for investigating foreign spies operating within the U.S.,
Mhm.
as well as preventing terrorist attacks on American soil.
So their work kind of intersects with both the CIA and NSA in many ways.
It does.
Sounds like there's a lot of potential for overlap and maybe even conflict between these agencies.
There can be. That's why the ODNI is so important.
Right.
It's meant to coordinate efforts, share information, and prevent agencies from working at cross purposes.
Yeah.
But even with the best intentions, things can get messy.
Yeah, that's a good point. Makes me wonder how all of this impacts me. The average person who isn't involved in espionage or counterterrorism,
Right.
is this just something happening in a world far removed from my daily life?
Not at all. Remember, the FBI is also responsible for investigating things like cybercrime,
Right.
which is becoming increasingly relevant to everyone.
Yeah.
They're the ones who go after the hackers that are trying to steal your identity or drain your bank account.
Oh, right. I hadn't thought about it that way before.
Yeah.
It's true. Cybercrime is something that could potentially affect anyone who uses the internet.
Right.
It makes the FBI's intelligence work hit a lot closer to home.
Exactly. And this brings us to another important topic, the politicization of intelligence.
Yeah.
It's something that's discussed in depth in the Hasted article you shared.
Right.
Essentially, it's about how political pressures and biases can distort intelligence analysis
Okay.
and potentially lead to flawed decisions.
This definitely sounds like something we need to unpack a bit more.
Yeah.
From what I remember reading, there are different forms of politicization.
Right.
Something about hard and soft politicization. Can you explain the difference?
Sure. Hard politicization is overt and deliberate.
Okay.
Think about a political leader intentionally manipulating intelligence
Right.
to fit a predetermined policy agenda
Okay.
or to justify a course of action they've already decided on.
Mm-hmm.
Soft politicization is more subtle, often unconscious.
Right.
It could involve analysts self-censoring their findings
Okay.
because they fear backlash from their superiors.
Right.
Or it could be about confirmation bias,
Yeah.
where people tend to favor information that supports their pre-existing beliefs.
So how does this play out in the real world?
Okay.
Can you give me an example?
Take the case of the 2003 invasion of Iraq.
Okay.
There was significant pressure on intelligence agencies to find evidence that Saddam Hussein possessed weapons of mass destruction, which was ultimately used to justify the invasion. However, much of the intelligence turned out to be flawed,
Yeah.
and no WMDs were ever found.
Right.
This is a prime example of how politicization can lead to disastrous consequences.
That's a sobering example.
Yeah,
It really highlights the importance of critical thinking when it comes to intelligence.
absolutely.
We can't just blindly accept information, especially when it comes to sensitive topics like national security.
You always have to consider the source. Look for multiple perspectives
Right.
and be aware of the potential for bias.
Yeah.
The more you understand about how intelligence can be manipulated, the better equipped you'll be to spot it and make informed judgments.
Mm-hmm.
It's like developing your own personal BS detector for the intelligence world.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And it's particularly important in today's world where we're bombarded with information from all sides.
Right.
It's more important than ever to be able to filter through all that noise and get to the truth. Speaking of filtering through noise, one area where things seem particularly murky and fast-moving is the intersection of technology and intelligence.
Yeah.
Some of the sources you shared point to some truly mind-blowing advancements that are already shaping the intelligence landscape.
It's an area that's changing at an incredible pace.
Yeah.
And one of the most significant game changers is artificial intelligence, or AI.
Right.
It's already being used by intelligence agencies to analyze massive amounts of data, identify patterns that humans might miss,
Okay.
and even detect cyber threats in real time.
Okay, but how does that actually work?
Right.
I mean, AI can sound pretty abstract. Can you
Yeah.
give me a concrete example?
Imagine a program that can sift through millions of emails.
Okay.
Social media posts financial transactions,
Right.
looking for telltale signs of a terrorist plot or a cyber attack.
Mm-hmm.
The program uses machine learning algorithms
Okay.
to identify unusual patterns of behavior or communication
Right.
that might indicate a threat, and this frees up human analysts to focus on the most critical cases.
That's fascinating.
Yeah,
So AI is essentially acting as a force multiplier,
exactly.
helping intelligence agencies to do more with the resources that they have.
Right. But there's a flip side.
Okay.
AI can also be used by malicious actors
Okay.
to launch more sophisticated attacks, spread disinformation more effectively,
Right.
or even develop autonomous weapons systems.
Now that's where things get really interesting and even a little bit scary.
Right.
Autonomous weapon systems, the stuff of science fiction movies,
Yeah.
becoming a reality. I came across a report that talked about optionally manned tanks and micro drones.
Right.
Can you tell me more about those?
These are two examples of how AI is changing warfare.
Okay.
Optionally manned tanks, as the name suggests,
Mm-hmm.
can operate with or without a human crew,
Right.
relying on AI to make decisions on the battlefield.
Okay.
And micro drones are tiny, almost invisible flying robots that can swarm a target, collect intelligence, or even deliver a lethal payload.
That's both incredible and a bit unsettling.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder where all of this is headed.
Right. Yeah.
We've gone from Cold War espionage to AI-powered drones in the blink of an eye.
It's a rapid evolution, and
Yeah.
it's raising all sorts of ethical questions.
Yeah, like if we have machines making life or death decisions on the battlefield,
Right.
who's ultimately responsible?
Exactly.
What happens if they make a mistake?
Right.
Those are important questions.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the battlefield.
Right.
What about the implications for privacy and security
Yeah.
in our everyday lives.
That's another key concern. We're generating an unprecedented amount of data every day
Right.
through our smartphones, social media, and online activities. And much of this data is accessible to intelligence agencies,
Right.
which are increasingly using AI to analyze it.
Yeah.
This raises all sorts of questions about surveillance privacy and the potential for abuse.
It sounds like a double-edged sword. AI can be a powerful tool for good,
Mm-hmm.
but it can also be misused in ways that threaten our freedoms and security.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to have these conversations, to understand the potential of AI, both for good and for ill,
Yeah.
and to ensure that it's used ethically and responsibly. We can't just sit back and let the technology dictate our future.
Well said. And speaking of technologies with the potential to reshape our future,
Right.
one topic that came up in several of the sources you provided was bioengineering.
Yeah.
That one really caught my attention because it seems particularly fraught with ethical dilemmas.
It's a field with immense potential to revolutionize medicine and improve human health.
Yeah.
But it also carries significant risks,
Right.
particularly when you consider its potential applications in intelligence and warfare.
Can you give me a concrete example of how bioengineering might be used in the intelligence world? It sounds pretty sci-fi to me.
Imagine a scenario where bioengineered viruses are used for surveillance. These viruses could be designed to be harmless,
Right.
but to collect specific DNA samples or other biological markers from individuals they infect. The information could then be used to track people's movements,
Yeah.
identify their associates, or even assess their predisposition to certain diseases.
That's straight out of a spy thriller.
It is.
It's fascinating, but also pretty creepy to think about.
Yeah.
And I imagine there are all sorts of ethical concerns about using bioengineering in this way.
Absolutely. Who would have access to this information?
Right.
How would it be used?
Right.
What safeguards would be in place to prevent abuse?
Yeah.
These are all questions that need to be carefully considered before this technology advances any further.
It's a reminder that with every technological leap forward,
Right.
we also have to grapple with new ethical challenges.
Yeah,
It feels like we're on the cusp of a whole new era,
it does.
and it's both exciting and terrifying at the same time.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's a time of immense change and uncertainty, that's for sure. And it's more important than ever to be informed,
Right.
to think critically, and to engage in the debates that will shape our future.
Yeah.
We'll be back after a short break to delve further into the world of digital IDs
Okay.
and discuss their potential impact on your life. Welcome back. Before the break, we were discussing bioengineering and its potential applications in intelligence gathering.
Right.
It's a topic that kind of naturally leads us to a broader conversation about the balance between national security and civil liberties. It's a theme that runs through many of the sources you provided.
Yeah, it seems like every time the intelligence community gains a new capability,
Right.
it also raises questions about privacy
Yeah.
and the potential for overreach.
Yeah.
How do we ensure that the tools that are meant to protect us don't end up being used against us?
It's a constant tension, a delicate balancing act.
Right.
On one hand, you have the legitimate need to protect the nation from threats, both foreign and domestic. On the other hand, you have the fundamental rights of individuals to privacy and freedom from unreasonable intrusion. Finding that sweet spot is never easy.
One thing that really struck me while going through these materials was the sheer scale of data collection happening today.
Right.
The NSA, for example, has access to a mind-boggling amount of information.
It's massive.
It's almost impossible to comprehend the volume of data they're collecting and analyzing.
It's truly massive.
Yeah.
And technology has only accelerated this trend.
Right.
Think about the proliferation of smartphones, social media, the Internet of Things, even smart home devices.
Right.
We're generating an unprecedented amount of data every day, and much of it is potentially accessible to intelligence agencies.
So what kind of safeguards are in place to prevent abuse? How do we know that our private information isn't being misused by these agencies?
Well, there are laws and oversight mechanisms designed to regulate how intelligence agencies can collect and use data.
Okay.
One key example is the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, or FISA. This law was enacted in 1978
Okay.
and has been amended several times since, particularly after the 9/11 attacks. It's meant to ensure that electronic surveillance is conducted legally and with appropriate judicial oversight.
So FISA acts as a kind of check on the power of intelligence agencies,
That's the idea.
making sure they're not just spying on people willy-nilly.
It requires intelligence agencies to obtain warrants from a special court, the FISA court.
Right.
before they can conduct electronic surveillance on U.S. citizens or residents.
Right.
They have to demonstrate probable cause that the target of the surveillance is involved in activities that threaten national security.
That sounds like a reasonable system,
Yeah.
but it also seems like it could be pretty easy to exploit.
Mm-hmm.
What's to stop an agency from just making up a reason to get a warrant?
That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
And it's why transparency and accountability are so important.
Okay.
The FISA court operates in secret,
Right.
which has led to criticism that it lacks sufficient oversight. There's an ongoing debate about how to balance the need for secrecy in intelligence operations with the need for transparency to ensure that these powers aren't being abused.
It's a tough one.
It is.
I could see both sides of the argument.
Yeah.
On the one hand, I understand the need to keep certain intelligence activities secret to protect national security.
Right.
But on the other hand, I also value my privacy and don't want to feel like I'm constantly being watched by Big Brother.
Right.
Where do we draw the line?
It's a question that each individual has to answer for themselves.
Right.
But it's important to stay informed about the capabilities of the intelligence community and to engage in the public debate about how these powers should be used.
Yeah.
You have a voice, and you can make a difference by advocating for policies that protect your privacy and civil liberties.
That's empowering to hear.
Yeah.
It's easy to feel helpless when you think about the vastness of the intelligence apparatus,
I know.
but ultimately it's accountable to the public.
Exactly. And this leads us to another key question. How is the intelligence community itself adapting to the rapid pace of change in our world? Many of the sources you provided suggest that the traditional intelligence model is struggling to keep up.
Right.
It was designed for a different era, one dominated by nation-states and clearly defined threats.
Yeah, the world is a much messier place now.
It is.
We're dealing with everything from terrorist groups and lone wolf attackers to sophisticated cyber criminals and state-sponsored disinformation campaigns.
Right.
It seems like the old ways of doing things might not be as effective in this new environment.
That's a growing realization within the intelligence community.
Okay.
There's a push to break down the traditional stovepipes between agencies, to foster more collaboration and information sharing,
Okay.
and to embrace new technologies and approaches.
Right.
The future of intelligence will require agility, innovation, and a willingness to adapt.
One of the reports you shared talked about the need to recruit a new generation of intelligence professionals.
Right.
People with skills in areas like data science, cybersecurity, and even cultural analysis.
It's true.
It seems like the stereotypical image of the intelligence officer as a white male with a military background is outdated.
Absolutely. The intelligence community needs to become more diverse, more representative of the population it serves,
Right.
and more attuned to the nuances of a globalized world.
Uh-huh.
It needs people who can understand different cultures, analyze complex data sets, and think outside the box.
So what does this mean for someone like me who's interested in a career in intelligence?
Okay.
What kind of skills and qualities are they looking for?
The doors are opening to a wider range of candidates than ever before.
Okay.
If you have skills in data analysis, foreign languages, cultural anthropology, or even psychology, there's a place for you in the intelligence community.
Wow.
The future of intelligence isn't just about spies and secret agents.
Right.
It's about understanding the world, connecting the dots, and providing insights that can help shape policy and protect national security.
That's really inspiring to hear. It makes me want to dust off my old Spanish textbook. But seriously,
Yeah.
it's encouraging to know that the intelligence community is recognizing the need for diversity and new perspectives.
It's a vital step in ensuring that the intelligence community can effectively address the challenges of the 21st century.
Right.
And it's not just about diversity of backgrounds, it's also about diversity of thought.
Okay.
Encouraging critical thinking, challenging assumptions, and being open to different viewpoints is essential.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
If everyone in the room is thinking the same way, you're bound to miss something important.
exactly.
You need people who are willing to ask tough questions
Yeah,
and challenge the status quo.
exactly. And that leads us to another crucial theme that emerged from our deep dive,
Okay.
the importance of transparency and accountability.
Yeah, that's been a hot button issue for years, especially in the wake of scandals like the Iran-Contra affair and the Snowden leaks. How do we ensure that the intelligence community is operating ethically and within the bounds of the law while still maintaining the secrecy necessary for its operations?
It's a complex challenge,
Yeah.
but there are a few key principles that can guide us.
Okay.
First, we need robust oversight mechanisms, both within the government and from independent bodies.
Right.
This includes congressional committees that have access to classified information and can hold the intelligence community accountable for its actions.
So checks and balances are crucial, just like in any other branch of government.
Absolutely. And second, we need to foster a culture of transparency within the intelligence community itself.
Okay.
This means encouraging whistleblowers to come forward without fear of reprisal when they see wrongdoing.
Right.
It also means being more open with the public about the intelligence community's activities whenever possible to build trust and understanding.
It's about striking a balance between secrecy and openness.
Right.
Recognizing that the public has a right to know how its intelligence agencies are operating, even if some details have to remain classified.
Right. And this brings us to a final and perhaps the most crucial point of all,
Okay.
the importance of ethics in intelligence.
You know, it's funny. In all the spy movies I've watched, ethics always seems to take a backseat to the mission.
Yeah.
It's all about the ends justifying the means.
Right.
Is that the reality of intelligence work, or is Hollywood just giving us a distorted view?
Hollywood definitely plays up the moral ambiguity of espionage. In the real world, ethics should be paramount.
Okay.
Intelligence professionals are entrusted with immense power,
Right.
and they have a moral obligation to wield that power responsibly.
So what does ethical intelligence look like in practice?
Oh,
What are the guiding principles that should inform the actions of intelligence professionals?
it starts with a commitment to always adhering to the law, even when it's difficult or inconvenient.
Okay.
It means respecting human rights, even when dealing with adversaries. And it means being truthful and transparent, both within the intelligence community and with the public whenever possible.
It sounds like a tall order.
It is.
I mean, intelligence work often involves operating in the shadows, making tough decisions, sometimes even bending the rules.
Right.
How do you maintain your ethical compass in that kind of environment?
It's not easy, but it's absolutely essential.
Right.
That's why strong leadership is so important.
Okay.
Leaders within the intelligence community need to set a clear ethical example.
Right.
And they need to foster a culture where ethical behavior is rewarded and unethical behavior is punished swiftly and decisively.
It's about having the right training, the right mindset, and a strong ethical foundation to guide your actions, even when you're facing immense pressure in difficult choices.
Exactly. And it's about understanding that the decisions made by intelligence professionals have real-world consequences.
Right.
They can impact the lives of individuals, the fate of nations, even the course of history.
Yeah.
The stakes are incredibly high, and that's why ethical consideration should always be at the forefront.
It's a heavy responsibility, but it's also an incredibly important one.
It is.
Intelligence,
Yeah.
when used ethically and effectively, can help to keep us safe, prevent conflict, and even save lives.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so important to have open and honest conversations about the role of intelligence in our society.
Right.
We can't just leave it to the experts behind closed doors. We need to engage in the debate, ask tough questions, and hold our leaders accountable.
Well said.
Yeah.
And with that, I think we're ready to wrap up our deep dive into the world of intelligence.
Welcome back. Diving into this world of intelligence has been really eye-opening for me. I think, it's easy to get caught up in the headlines and the spy thrillers,
Yeah.
but this deep dive has shown just how deeply intertwined intelligence is with our everyday lives.
Yeah, it's true. We've gone from Cold War espionage to AI-powered drones.
Right.
And from massive data collection to the potential for bioengineered weapons.
Yeah.
It's a lot to process.
It is. And, it's clear that this is only the tip of the iceberg.
Exactly. And speaking of just the tip of the iceberg, one of the sources you shared, the CSIS report, mentioned something that really caught my attention: quantum computing. It sounds like something out of Star Trek, but apparently it's a real technology with the potential to completely upend the intelligence world.
It absolutely is, and it's closer than you might think.
Wow.
Quantum computers operate on completely different principles than our current computers.
Okay.
They leverage the strangeness of quantum mechanics to perform calculations in ways that are simply impossible for traditional computers.
Okay, but what does that mean for intelligence gathering? How would quantum computing change the game?
Imagine a world where our current encryption methods are rendered useless overnight.
Okay.
That's the potential power of quantum computing.
Wow.
The algorithms that protect our bank accounts, our communications, even our national secrets could be cracked wide open.
That's terrifying. It's like giving our adversaries a master key to all of our most sensitive data.
It's a very real threat that intelligence agencies are already taking seriously.
So they are working on this.
They are.
Oh,
They're investing heavily in quantum research, both to develop their own quantum capabilities and to find ways to defend against these new threats.
so it's like an arms race, but instead of nukes, we're talking about quantum computers.
Yeah, it is.
It's both fascinating and a bit scary to think about.
It certainly is. But it highlights a key theme that we've touched on throughout this deep dive: the importance of being aware, of understanding the forces shaping our world,
Right.
and of engaging in the conversations that will determine our future. We can't just sit back and let technology dictate the terms of our lives.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the most valuable takeaways from this deep dive.
Yeah.
It's not just about learning the ins and outs of intelligence agencies
Right.
or memorizing a bunch of facts.
Yeah.
It's about cultivating a mindset of critical thinking, curiosity, and a willingness to question assumptions.
Well said. We're living in a world of unprecedented complexity and rapid change.
The intelligence community is evolving to meet these challenges, but so must we.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one message you'd like our listeners to walk away with?
The future is not predetermined. It's being shaped right now by the choices we make, the conversations we have, and the actions we take. The intelligence community plays a vital role in protecting our nation.
Right.
But ultimately, it's accountable to us, the public. We have a responsibility to stay informed, to engage in the debate, and to demand that our intelligence agencies operate ethically, transparently, and in a way that upholds our values.
That's a powerful message. And I think it's a perfect note to end on.
Indeed.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the world of intelligence. We hope you found it informative, thought-provoking, and maybe even a little bit inspiring. Remember, knowledge is power, and the more you understand about the forces shaping our world, the better equipped you'll be to navigate the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead.